So wow, a new game from Blackmill Games and M2H, the same people who made Verdun. And first off, a big thank you to that whole team who shared this news with me early and this video with me early. That way I can make a video explaining what I saw, my analysis of it, and everything like that as soon as the news broke. So as you saw, this is going to be another standalone game from the makers of Verdun called Tannenberg. Now those of you who are complete military history buffs, let me explain Tannenberg to you a little bit. August 1914 basically kicked off with the German army marching through Belgium and fortifying the Western Front. The idea was to sweep wide through Belgium and hit France where they were least protected, and this would hopefully knock them out of the war early. Well, as you probably know, it didn't quite work out that way. They did sweep pretty wide, they did eventually break through most of the Belgian forts, but by the time that happened, units were able to reinforce, the British army landed, and the stalemate that would eventually be the Western Front slowly started to take form. Now this plan, the Schlieffen plan to cut through Belgium and knock France out of the war early, relied on the Russians to take a while to enter the war and have forces on the border. This wasn't the case. The Russians were basically more ready for this war than anybody else. Early within the month of August, Russians were already marching through East Prussia, areas in modern-day Poland that Germans found very precious to them due to historic connections to things like the Teutonic Knights, and the fact that the German Emperor Kaiser Wilhelm and many German royalty had homes in that area as well. And in this period, it wasn't much stopping the Russians, basically a token force, skirmishing with the Russians. Not really anything that's going to slow them down in their massive numbers at the time. But the Russians had to be dealt with. So Field Marshal Hindenburg was called out of retirement, and rising star in the German army, General Ludendorff, were called to the Russian front to repel this force. And this is where the Battle of Tannenberg takes shape. Due to many errors, poor communication, and a lack of understanding of technology at the time, the Russian plans of attack became known to the Germans very fast. The Germans intercepted cables, so they knew where the two main Russian armies were going, and they captured plans off a deceased Russian officer that basically confirmed these cable intercepts. So a trap was laid and minor defenses were built on the German side, and they slowly skirmished with the Russians, drawing them in closer to the area near Tannenberg. The battle actually didn't happen in Tannenberg, but it was named that reason. For once again, Teutonic Knight reasons, to, pride and the such. And in this trap, the Russian First Army was basically completely destroyed. Its commander was so basically ashamed and demoralized, they walked off in the woods at night and killed himself. In a 4-day span, almost 200,000 Russians were killed or captured. So this leads me to question how it's going to play, especially compared to the original Verdun, where the Germans had built up trenches, the Allies or the Entente had built up trenches. It wasn't so on the Eastern Front. It was a pretty mobile front. I mean, the Germans had some built-up defenses in this battle, but it was nothing like the Western Front. Is it going to be a battle mode where basically armies clash in open fields? And given the nature of the battle, I mean, the Russians are at a clear disadvantage. And Verdun's always been historically pretty brutal of a game, so I don't see them gamifying it too much. And I wonder if they're going to expand the battle out, not just Tannenberg, but the battles around it and the battles that immediately happened after it. This battle destroyed one of the Russian armies, but the other Russian army was nearly destroyed in the Battle of the Marzahn Lakes. Probably butchered that word. And the Eastern Front also gives us new opportunity to see different factions. The Austro-Hungarians fought on the Eastern Front, and so did the Ottoman Empire. So I'm really excited to see what kind of content and factions they add into Tannenberg. But if you look here, we can already see that they're adding new weapons for sure. This is pretty clearly the Mosin-Nagant, which seems like a duh for everybody that they would add this. Probably one of the more popular rifles at the time. I looked around a little bit and it seems like everyone's holding Mosin-Nagants to try to see if there's any like Type 38s or anything in there. Didn't see anything else more as far as weapons go, except for the obvious saber, which is really cool. It kind of adds in something like you saw in Rising Storm, one of Tripwire Interactive's games, with the samurai charges. So that's going to be curious to see if that builds up a boost too, like it did in Rising Storm. If they kind of borrowed one of those features, it'd be interesting to see if they incorporate anything like that. And then on the German side, there's two different things I want to look at. First, this one's pretty much obviously an MG08. We have the MG0815 and the MG0818 currently in the game, or in Verdun. I'm sorry, they're standalone games, so not the same game. The 08 being the original design, the more heavier design. And as you can see, this one is mounted pretty firmly, so I'm wondering if it's going to be a fixed emplacement or something you have to deploy over a time, or if it's going to, be something lumbering along. And last thing I want to look at is what this soldier is shooting. It appears to be some sort of Gewehr. I don't know. It doesn't look like a 98 to me. I don't think it is. It seems a little bit longer. I'm leaning closer to maybe like a Gewehr 71. It was a longer gun. It was obviously earlier on, and the later you go in history, the bigger weapons tend to get. So I'm leaning closer to the 71. They did have them early on in the war. So it's a possibility, and it's something new, so I like new things. So guys, that's my thoughts and opinions on this trailer and this awesome news. What do you guys think? Are you excited for the Eastern Front? What factions do you want to see? What weapons do you want to see? Please let me know in the comments below. And until next time, have a great one.